Those tuning in, thank you for watching, and thank you for those great questions. We are less than 1 year away from Lucy's October 2021 launch date, and be sure to visit nasa.gov/Lucy for more information about the mission. And if you want to stay up to date on mission milestones and activities, be sure to follow NASA's solar system on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Again, thank you so much for tuning in, and see you next time.
During entry, descent, and landing. And then we'll have audio when we're driving, or the rover has a laser zap on another planet, which is kind of something that's kind of hard to even wrap your mind around.
And that hasn't been recorded before?
No, not with a microphone, not this way. We've never had a microphone on the rover like that.
Okay, well, send those audio files my way when you get them.
I'm Phil Lamar. And welcome to NASA's Ask the Astronomers Live,
extra computer,
the show where we
extra computer allows us to make the rover
not
smarter, and we
here
actually self-drive on Mars. So the
answer your
rover
questions
has
about
to
the universe.
take imagery
Now, if you want to find out
of the
about
area in front of it, literally build its own map. It can then identify different types of obstacles and slopes, and based on that and its knowledge of where it's able to drive, it decides on the path.
The Mars database was in one of the easiest ones because it's where we have the most high resolution imagery. It's been so well captured from so many different points of view.
We've seen the soil on a terrestrial level, and then we also have imaging of Mars from above. And looking through this data set of massive data set of incredible images.
Go ahead
Once
and
we
visit our
train the AI on that,
Unplugged
it was
website,
able to kind of produce such
and there you can ask
vivid,
questions of our scientists in the comment section.
imagery.
And if you do,
of Mars
make sure to
itself, I
include your
think,
social media
is
handle
so much more
so that we
complex
can
and so
credit
much
you
more
on a show like
deep
this one.
and varied than we
All right,
imagined
today
it is.
we're going to be talking to a couple of astronomers who
So
convert
one more
images
cool
into
feature
sound
about the
in a
Perseverance rover
process
is that it can
aptly
also
called
act as a
sonification.
scientist. The rover can look at the environment
find
around
out
it
more
and
about
look at all the
sonification, but
rocks
first,
and say,
let's
hey,
find out about
this
our
rock over
guests.
there looks really cool.
We are joined
Let me
today
image it,
by
use
Dr.
my laser to zap
Kim
it
Arkin,
and figure
who is
out
a
what's under that
visualization
surface, send all of that data
from
back to the
NASA's
scientists.
Chandra
So
X-ray
it allows
Science
us to
Center at the
essentially
Harvard
have
Smithsonian Center
scientists
for
on Mars making
astrophysics.
decisions
Hi,
without
Kim.
having humans in the loop here on the ground.
It's a long one. Thank you for
I
having
think,
me here today.
to me, the idea of space is a bit overwhelming.
Thank you for coming.
And
Tell us a little about yourself.
awe-inspiring.
Sure.
Just the idea
Well,
of
you know, when I was a
listening to
kid, I
piece of
kind of
music
wanted
and
to
we go
be
somewhere else.
every
Our
kind of
lives
scientist
change.
you could
You know,
imagine.
it's a mirror to this other
Environmentalist,
idea
doctor,
of space
veterinarian,
and space
you named it.
exploration.
But what I
letting
realized
the
is I was
imagery
actually
of
really
these
attracted to computers and being able to use data to essentially talk about science. So I essentially get to spend my days just doing that, using data of the universe to be able to tell stories about that data based on the science. And that story might take the form of a two-dimensional image, it might take the form of a three-dimensional model,
places
or
with this
perhaps
music,
a data sonification.
Has been really satisfying to me.
You are a Renaissance woman.
Sure, I'll take it.
You know, I
Well,
feel
today we are also
really
joined
fortunate to
by Dr. Matt Russo,
to
who's
have
an
you all
astrophysicist
open
at
your
the University
doors
of Toronto.
to me and my music.
Hello, Matt.
And
Hi, Phil.
for us to go somewhere with it
Matt,
that was
tell
unexpected.
folks a little
even
about
for me.
yourself and your work.
Sure. So I'm an astrophysicist. I teach at the University of Toronto, and I'm also a musician. So for a while, I've been calling myself an astro musician. But to be more technical and precise, I'm a sonification specialist. And so I work in astronomy, which means I'm finding a way to listen to the rhythms and harmonies and really any kind of
This is
data we can get
Ask NASA.
about the universe we live in.
I mean, that would be the show tune way.
Wow.
All
So
kinds
you're
of guitars.
taking the data
and this guitar
that
is actually
scientists, get
from
the universe
1901,
and converting it into
and it has these
music?
ivory pegs. All right,
Not
so
just
these are some
random
vintage
clunks
keyboards.
and-
This is the 808,
Sometimes
which
random
is
clunks, but
responsible
also
for the
sometimes
sound
music.
of all trap music.
And it's
the
kind of up
Moog.
to the listener in some cases.
And this is
Random
responsible
clunk can be
for
beautiful
most
too.
of the music of the 80s. A couple of pedals that I use,
some sort of tombstones.
little
Well,
bits and bobs.
Now, usually when I'm
Failure is an
talking about
option where you
sonification,
learn from your
which
mistakes,
I do more
get
frequently
back up
than one
again,
would think,
and try again.
I like to
My
start
name is
with,
Anwin, and I'm bringing new
what is
capabilities to
sonification?
small spacecraft. CubeSats are a class
well,
of
in its
small
simplest
satellites.
form, data
This is
sonification is
People have been
essentially just
adopting
the
them
process
all the way
of
from
translating
elementary schools
information of
to
some
NASA
kind
and
into
special
sound
ventures.
of
If
some
we want
kind.
to go
But I
beyond
think
Earth,
what might be
we
helpful for
need
the
these
conversation is just to take a quick
we
step
are
back.
the first to fly
So
these
if we look at
technologies.
our
They
first
are risky.
slide,
You know, you can get creative.
we
to
can
do the
see
test
that
you want to
essentially
do.
when
If
we're trying
one of
to
these spacecraft
understand
goes out
the
of
universe,
commission,
when
then we
we're
send up
studying
a few
all of
more.
those things
This is what
around
we've
us,
done.
these
We've qualified
incredible
all these components
cosmic
in
and
space, and
celestial
we've qualified
events,
this technology
there are
that
all
it can
different
be
types
done
of
on
light
a
that we can do
CubeSat.
that in.
As humans,
We
we're
can use
so
X-ray light, we
interested
can
to
use
see
infrared light, we
what's
can
out
use
there,
optical
what
or
can we
visible
do.
light, and we can
Me
use
and my
ultraviolet
handsome
light.
friends
It
here,
really
we go
depends on
exploring
the
a lot.
questions that we're
Multi-day
trying to
rafting
ask.
trips,
But what that
backpacking
means
trips,
is most of the
scuba
light,
diving
most of this
together,
information
kind of
that we're
same
getting of the universe is
exploration,
actually
what
something
we
that
can
we
do to
can't
push
see
the
with human
boundaries.
eyes. Even if it's optical or visible light, that light is typically magnified to great lengths using very special pieces of equipment, such as the Hubble Space Telescope, in order to get that information. So in the next slide, you'll see that when we get our information, we have to translate it in some form. In this case, we're looking at Cassiopeia A, which is the remains of a star that exploded about 10,300 years ago. And we're looking at that now as a
we have always
two-dimensional
answered
image.
the
But
innate
even
call
that
to
process,
go.
getting to this step here, has
With
taken
Artemis,
some translation.
we
And then we
are
go
going to
further
stay.
in that
Proving that
process of
humanity
translation, if you
can
will,
live on the moon,
and see it in
Mars,
full color.
and other
because we've been
worlds.
able to add
and
color
share
to
the
that image
wonders
to
of
be
the
able
solar
to
system with all.
pick out the various chemical elements that are
Our story is
part
one
of that
of
expanding
All
bit
those
of
who make this journey possible.
From advocates across communities
to companies across industries,
to countries around the world.
We achieve this collective endeavor.
Our efforts create impact for all.
Technologies that revolutionize industries.
And jobs that bring prosperity to people. The discoveries from space
benefit the way we live on Earth today.
And those from the moon
will create a better future
for generations to come. But to do that,
we must go.
Hi, I'm Shel Linger. My name is Rajan Chari.
But at the end of the day,
I'm Christina Cook.
More
NASA astronaut Joe Acaba.
When we have really special data, we can take it and we can create, for example, a 3D model.
Stephanie Wilson.
We see in our
My
next
name is
one.
Johnny Kim.
This is just
Nicole
a very
Mann.
quick
Victor
glimpse
Glover.
of that.
Jessica Watkins.
Hi, I'm Matthew Dominic.
Jasmine Montbelli.
Frank Rubio.
Scott Tingle.
This is what we do. This is what we will do.
Let's go.
And then,
go to the moon
again,
to learn
once
how
we
to
have
live
it
on
in
other
some other
planets.
form,
For
we
the
can take it
benefit
and
of
translate it
all.
into something else, like, for example, data sonification. The point is, we're getting all of this data, right? And it's just really at its very simplest form,
Going to
a series
space
of ones and zeros.
is awesome.
So it's up to us
My
to be able
first
to decide
flight
what
was on the
kind
space
of
shuttle.
output.
You get into the vehicle, you're all strapped in. You know, we have the countdown timer that's going on. You get to 0 and the launch begins. In your mind, you're thinking, I can't believe this is actually happening. It's the coolest experience ever.
Hola, Joseph. ¿Es tu padre? Hey, Pops. It's good to hear your voice. Thanks for the support. The launch was awesome.
When I look back to who inspired me, it started with my grandfather. He actually had the old films of the Apollo missions that we would watch.
Would like to make
I've
that
been fortunate
information, and that
that I've
output
had
could
those
take many different
mentors
forms. It could
that have
take
supported
the form of
me
a 3D
and
print.
motivated
It
me
could
to
take
be
the
where
form
I am
of a
today.
virtual reality application. It's
I
all
was
about being able
born
to
in
translate
Southern
information of our
California,
universe into
reading,
some form
playing
that we
sports,
can't see naturally
enjoyed
with
being
our human eyes.
outdoors, spent some time in the United States Marine Corps Reserve, was a U.S. Peace Corps volunteer, did a lot of different jobs until I found the one that I felt was the most important job on the planet, which is being a school teacher. It was one of the jobs I never thought I would leave until I was given this opportunity to become a NASA astronaut.
NASA astronaut Joe Acaba making his third flight into space.
I've had the opportunity to go on 3 space missions, and I've spent about 306 days in space to actually walk on the moon. For me, to have that as a possibility is just incredible. This is our next step to explore places we have never been before.
Okay, so you're not just randomly doing it just because you can.
Right.
Or understand it on another level. Because I have to say, that image you had of Cassiopeia A is definitely a lot more interesting than some immense Excel.
All right, NASA family and friends, our first astronaut, Kayla Barron.
I think the thing that's most important to me is just the inspiration of exploration.
Exactly.
I think we
and
all
these are
have
all
this
steps,
innate
right, in a
sense
process
to
of translation, and we're making
whether
choices
you're the one
along
who
the way.
actually
But
gets to
as you
step on
said,
the moon or not,
we are
I
using
think
the
it
science.
changes all of us to know that we can actually do things that would be unimaginable to the generations that came before us. 9/11 happened 8 days before my 14th birthday, so I was in 8th grade. And I was really inspired by how our country responded to that really tragic event. It really made me realize that I wanted to serve and commit myself to something that was bigger than just me. And there's a huge diversity of opportunities in the Navy, whether it's flying a plane, driving a surface ship, driving a submarine, being a doctor. And I spent a week with the submarine warfare community, including a day underway. And I was so impressed by the sailors on that submarine.
Having a bad day,
just
thinking,
seemed
I'm
like the
going to
kind
make
of
this image
people
blue because I
who
feel
would
blue,
teach
right?
me
There
how to
really
be
is
a
a,
good
well, I guess I
leader.
could. But
For me, the dream of becoming an astronaut cemented itself pretty late in my life. I went back to the Naval Academy to work for Admiral Ted Carter. And because I was working with him, I got to go to all of these really cool events and meet a lot of people who I had no business talking to, really. I met one of his classmates, former astronaut Kay Heyer, and she was telling me about one of her shuttle missions where they were building the early space station. And I said, that sounds a lot like a submarine in space.
there really is a
She looked at me,
point.
she's like,
There really is
totally
a point
It's
to the
exactly what it's
process
like.
and a reason
And
for
that was
making
sort
that
of the
translation
lightning
from
strike
one form
moment.
to another.
As a kid,
Because we can't see
I knew
it,
about
and it's
astronauts.
neat.
I watched shuttle launches on TV. I knew we were in space, but never seemed like something that I could do. But I had really good mentorship at that time. I shared that dream with my boss, Admiral Carter. He turned to me and he said, Kayla, do you know how you become an astronaut?
We have to do that translation.
You apply.
And we're humans. We have
and
our
for
own.
me, that was the perfect mentorship I needed in that moment. I'm somebody who thinks really hard about everything I do, all the details. And he said, it's actually pretty simple. You just got to put yourself out there and you never know what's going to happen. So I did apply and it ended up working out. Here I am.
Experiences and perspectives, of course, but we use the science to essentially.
For me, every time I have an NBL run, or every time I do a practice spacewalk, and you get in that suit, like we call it the EMU, and feel the gloves go on, feel the pressure build, feel the fans start to flow, and the air start to come over the back of your head, and you realize, like, this is it. That's when it really strikes me that this is actually not a dream. This is actually happening.
That's right. So the first one
I go by Grinder.
is
I grew up in
an image that we're going to listen
went to the Air
to
Force
today.
Academy and then
So
MIT,
this isn't
and
actually
then, was
one
an Air
image.
Force test pilot.
If I ask my mom, she definitely has memories of me as a child talking about being an astronaut. Well, I always knew I wanted to do something related to aviation, but at the same time, I think I also started telling myself it wasn't really possible because it was just something to get let down from. Every phase of my life, I had doubt. Whether it was at the Air Force Academy and wondering whether I could survive basic training, whether it was when I was at MIT,
Actually,
even
three
pilot
combined.
training, failing
So this
check
is what
rides,
happens when you
and
put
thinking again,
three
maybe I'm
telescopes.
on the wrong path. But I think in all those events, I've been blessed to have a supportive family, supportive spouse, supportive mentors and leaders who helped me at the time realize, like, hey, these are setbacks, and you get better by tackling those head on. For the Artemis mission, they're not just PowerPoint slides. They're actually metals being bent, shaped, formed to build the things that we're going to use. And as a test pilot background, this
Hubble,
is
Spitzer, and
a dream
Chandra
job to
at
actually
the
be involved
beating
in
heart
all
of
this.
the Milky Way. You put those telescopes right at the core of our Milky Way galaxy.
Just
and they all record different types of information.
What's actually happening
and here we're seeing it in a visible form. They're all kind of layered on top of each other.
Newton
but
talks about
today we want
standing
to
on the shoulders
listen
of
to this
giants.
data.
Now, I'm definitely not a giant, but if I can throw a little stepping stone out there, that would be my goal. My name is Rajachari.
Since we're taking two-dimensional data and we want to listen to it, we have to make some choices. So the first one is, how are we going to evolve through it in time? And so in this case, we're going to let time.
That's awesome. Very good, very good. I like it. I like it. Drop your hand.
Oh, what am I doing? We're videotaping this?
Everything you're doing.
Ladies and gentlemen, our newest astronaut, Matthew Dominic.
I think if you boil it down to it, I'm a father, a husband, and an explorer.
Time flow.
For my whole life, I've always wanted to explore further. I didn't exactly know where I was going to go at any one time,
and to hear the different shapes
but I always
and
knew I wanted to go
structures
further
in the
or
image,
faster or
we're going to
higher.
let the pitch of note.
I remember as a kid going to air shows with my dad and just looking at airplanes, and I wanted to understand it, and so it was just drawn to it. Every air show I went to, I wanted to go get in that airplane.
I grew up in Wheat Ridge, Colorado. Went to the University of San Diego for electrical engineering and went to Naval Postgraduate School as well, Naval Test Pilot.
It's certainly a sacrifice for family and friends. Being in the military, we would go on deployments and lose contact with them, and they understood the risk
to the
that
top
we were
of the
taking.
image. So
you
bright
think
lights
about
near the bottom
the immense
are low
responsibility
notes,
put on
bright
you at
lights near the
times.
top are higher
You don't
notes.
want to let the world
and
down.
then the actual brightness
but it's about
of
pushing
the
humanity
light,
forward and keeping
radiation
America
we
safe.
receive is going to make the sound louder. And so with those
watching
choices,
rockets launch, right? I mean, watching shuttle launches as a kid was an enabler for me. It's like, how do I become a part of that? How do I join that team to go do that?
Godspeed to the class of 2017.
You find out you're getting this job, and that's huge. But really, that first time that you go put your hands into the gloves is just a very interesting moment.
Sonification that has
and you realize
all
that
these
this
three
is,
layers.
This is real. This is going to happen. We're going. My previous job was to keep the world from going backwards. This job was about getting the world to go forwards.
Hojo brings a lot of energy to our team, and he is always definitely 100% in
light,
anything he
infrared
does.
light, and there's X-ray light.
NASA
all
astronaut
combined
Matthew Dominic.
into one kind of symphony. They're each playing their own instrument.
My earliest
playing the
idea
same
of who I
song.
wanted to be growing up was my father.
Got it.
My father was a police officer, and so I wanted to be a police officer. And then I saw a shuttle launch on television, and I thought, I really want to drive one of those. And yes, I said drive because I didn't know any pilots or engineers even for that matter. I'm a public servant, and I have been for 22 years, since January of 1998. And so I ask myself, have I done all that I can for my country and for my family? I have fantasized about stepping on the moon. It's my dream. My dream is to work on the surface of the moon. And being able to launch humans from American soil is a very big part of that. I was sitting at my desk in the Russell Senate office building, and I got a phone call from a Houston phone number, and by the time I answered, I missed it. And so I called back, and after a lot of waiting and being transferred, I was transferred to Janet Cavandi, who was the chair of our board, and she asked me if I wanted to come to Houston and commence training. And I actually pinched myself several times walking back to my office. There is no way that this is a real thing. I'm gonna wake up and be so disappointed. When I woke up the next day, and I actually had an email from Janet saying it was not a dream. That was actually unreal.
He's a lieutenant commander in the United States Navy, where he flew F-18s. He came to us from Washington, D.C., where he was serving as the United States Navy Legislative Fellow in the United States Senate. Victor?
Being selected for this job, you can't help but to think of, I've got so many friends that I know could do this job well. And that feeling of, wow, why didn't they get it? And feeling like you're not really good enough cut out for the job. And I felt all of those things. Being a father, a husband, all of those things come with doubt. And I think you have to learn to get comfortable with the doubt. They call things moonshots when people accomplish something amazing. No matter how good a story you tell, people are captivated by real world accomplishment. It's our generation's opportunity to have our own literal moonshot, and then to continue inspiring future generations to reach for the moon.
They not only have the right stuff, they represent the full tapestry of American diversity. Their journey begins now, and the nation will be right beside them, reaching for the stars.
I actually thought that I was not experienced enough, didn't have the credentials I needed to actually become an astronaut.
The reason I'd want to go to space with Woody isn't just because he's brilliant, which he is, but it's because he carries his brilliance in such a way that you don't feel like you're an idiot when you're around him.
It's funny, all the little decisions in life that get you to where you're going. My earliest memories, I remember building little toys out of wood. Over time, got to building like 21.
Wow.
Foot tall rockets, and one of those is still up at my parents' place, stored in their barn. I remember agonizing over what my major should be, and finally I sort of threw up my hands and said, I really like airplanes and things that fly, so I'll do aerospace engineering. One of the best decisions of my life was taking...
And we can dig into each of the layers. I can kind of show you what we were seeing and hearing in those.
Summers away from grad school to work search and rescue in Yosemite. One of my favorite parts of the job was getting thrown into situations where I wasn't quite sure what to do. The confidence I gained from that was that I can deal with the unexpected and adapt and overcome.
The other great thing about Woody is he applies that brilliance across all phases of his life, whether it's in the outdoors, where he basically saved half our class from getting severe hypothermia like it was no big deal. And then on his very first space station sim, nonchalantly directed the whole team through an emergency response.
This is Hubble's image of optical light. So this is
I've always had a slight tension in me between sort of the engineer, analytical, problem-solving part of me.
And so there's arcing bands of really dense clusters. So this is where stars are forming, and they're heating up the light in these kind of arcing bands, and those created kind of slowly moving pitches through the image.
And this sort of operational side of me that wanted to be out experiencing the world with my hands. I feel really lucky to be here now, where I have an opportunity to do operational things, but also solve really hard technical problems. When we go do hard things and challenge ourselves in that way, we will learn new things that will benefit us.
Ladies and gentlemen, our next newest astronaut, Woody Hoberg.
Which were a plucked string in this case. Are individual bright stars, or really bright sources.
I'm an engineer, I'm a pilot, I'm a climber, and I'm now a NASA astronaut.
Ladies and gentlemen, the newest NASA astronaut, Jonathan Kim.
We also, in there, we listened to a bit of the infrared light, and this one's much more...
Dr. Jonathan Kim.
That's just ridiculous.
Exploration is written. generation children.
There's the X-rays, so there's some very
children
bright sources here, which are extremely hot stars.
The confidence.
And there's also this and energetic place, and that's why the music kind of swells there at the crescendo.
To America with the hope of the American dream.
That's fascinating.
That
the decisions you make to
have
help,
a better opportunity,
make that stuff.
I had a hard time growing up.
Like you said, the string instruments were the stars. That was a choice.
I wake up
on your end
every day, and
there's a lot of artistic choices here. It's always
hard for me
balance.
to
in some cases you want to go more or less in one direction. Decided that strings would communicate the information the visitor thinks of, communicate the information for instruments, their telescope.
Proud to be part of an organization such a monumental challenge like returning to the moon.
Because I'm looking at this stuff,
and that's what really excites me when I think of
beautiful and fascinating.
Lives
and I'm
that we're
curious,
going to positively
because I have to admit, vacation before this.
Hard to articulate all those.
How did you become interested in vacation? Can I ask you that?
Sure.
I
think for me, I've always been very interested in what can we do with our data. I love two-dimensional images. I think they tend to be things of great beauty, but this data that is inherently visible to us for the most part anyways, it can take so many forms. So do we always have to privilege just that one form that so many of us are familiar with? What other outputs are useful to people? Who else for our audience consider?
Today's spaceflight will be the very first for NASA's Christina Cook.
We have to answer humanity's call to explore.
The data,
we have to set ourselves
and
as
so
the proactive and
it's really
one thing together.
It's difficult.
I am
with some of the
someone
audiences
who has loved exploration as little.
Pandemic
I used to be inspired by the night sky, and throughout my career, it's in engineering for space and remote places all over the world. I love things that feel small.
For example,
the size of
people
the
who are
universe,
blind
my
or
place
visually
in
impaired
it, and everything
are
that goes
not
out there
going
to
to
explore. These are
like
space
I
science
can.
missions.
And
I'm working really
how can we
hard
take
in that
it and
setting
extract
goals
just as
in
much
hobbies
value?
that I
Different
sail,
means the
surfing
world
at this point in my working hard on all fronts to be a better person and to contribute the most to the world is really what's important to me.
Why don't I sculpt?
I really don't remember a time when I didn't want to be an astronaut. For me, I learned that if I was going to be an astronaut, it was because my passions turned me into someone that could contribute the most as someone contributing to human spaceflight. So I didn't necessarily live my life according to astronaut, but I followed those passions. And one year looked at the skills I had gathered, and I asked, could I sit across from the table and
make a decision,
I just someone who could do this
didn't.
well?
So I tried to do both. So I did a degree in jazz guitar.
There was a moment where
and at the same time I was taking astronomy courses.
This was the most exquisite,
and when I was done, I did an astronomy
degree
degree,
in my life.
and I was playing
a moment
music in a band on the side.
Where everything I had learned
at the end of my astrophysics postdoc, when I would really have to make a decision,
it was all coming together
what
in
job
this
are you
moment.
actually going to take?
And I
How are you
realized
actually going to bring in
I
some money,
wanted
and what are
my
you going to do with your
work
life?
to tell every single
Right at that
person on
time,
Earth that they could have that moment too if they worked hard for it. And I wanted every single person on Earth to feel